Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. And if you've watched my JavaScript playlist, you know I've done several videos on destructuring, the spread operator, the rest operator. These are some of my favorite JavaScript features just because they really make a lot of situations require a lot less code. But I figured that since I have so many videos covering these things, to kind of do just sort of one video that kind of re-goes over it and goes over all the cool little tricks and tips now that I have gotten pretty comfortable with using destructuring a lot. So let's kind of set up the situation where destructuring comes into place. So for example, let's say I have const my array, which equals 1, 2, 3. Okay, and I wanted to separate those out to like 3 variables. I would have to do this. I'd have to be like const 1 equals my r 0, const 2 equals my r 1, const 3 equals my r2, and then I'd have all 3 variables freestanding. Console.log 1, 2, 3. Okay, oh, wrong file. Actually, I should save. There you go, 1, 2, 3. See, this is separated into 3 variables. Let's see, this is like a lot of lines of code and a lot of typing. What destructuring does, it allows us to kind of make this much more succinct. So I can do this instead. So this then becomes this. Const 1, 2, 3 equals my r. And that does the same thing as those 3 lines of code. Because what it does is that because we kind of put the variable names in an array, it's expecting that an array is going to be on this side of the equal sign. And then it's going to assign the first value in the array to 1, the second value in the array to 2, the third value in the array to 3. So if I hit save, it's 1, 2, and 3 are still worth 1, 2, and 3, but now I did it in a much more succinct code versus this. Cool, I mean, that's pretty neat. And that's what's referred to as array destructuring. So the idea is what you're doing is you're taking a collection like an array or an object, and you're, instead of building it, you're taking it apart. That's why it's called destructuring. Now, neat. Now another cool trick you can do. So let's say I only really want to have one separately. Okay, so maybe I make a variable called 2, 3, and then I want the other 2 variables inside 2, 3 as an array. I can use what's called the rest operator. The rest and the spread operator are both these 3 dots. Okay, they're both 3 dots. They're just different names depending on when you use them. So in this situation, what I'm doing is I'm saying I want the 1 will be assigned to 1, and the rest of the array will be assigned to 2, 3. Okay, that's why it's called the rest operator, because it means the rest. So usually when it's the rest operator, it's always at the end of the thing, because it's saying everything else goes here. So now you'll see that this is going to equal 1, and this will be an array of 2 and 3, all broken down from here. See? There it is. See? 1, and then an array with 2 and 3. Because we said we want the rest in here, which is really cool. That's a really neat trick. Okay. You know, I'm not saying that's something that's always useful, but let's say you had an array and you just really wanted that first thing, and you don't really care about the rest, you can do that. Also, another thing we can do, so let's say I only wanted 3. I only want 1 and 3. I don't need a variable for 2. I can do this. I just put a comma, leave this blank, so 2 will just not go anywhere. So there's going to be no variable for 2, but since I have the comma, it knows to skip 2 and go to 3. And let's name that variable 3. And then if I hit save, I console log it, 1 and 3. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Okay, other ways you can use this. another neat trick you can do is this. Const my r, let's say it equals 1 and 2, or we'll say, yeah, 1 and 2. Okay, and I want to swap the array. Okay, so let's see here. Or actually, here's what I want to do. Let me think about this. Swapping, because what I want to do is swap the values. Okay. It's like 1 and 2. So then what I do is I do const okay, now I remember. So let me delete this. Basically what it is we want to swap values of two variables. So let's say I have a variable called const a, which equals 5, and const b, which equals 6. And I want to swap their values. The way you use destructuring to do this is you say, okay, I want the first value for my destructuring to go into b. And I want the second value, or actually I could just do it either way. AB equals an array that has the values of b and a. So again, destructuring, it's going to take a look at this array and destructure it into here. So it's going to take the value of b and assign it to a, and take the value of a and assign it to b. So I've just swapped this. So if I now console log a and b, again, a and b is originally 5 and 6. So if I go like that, I can get a syntax error. Just kidding. So identifier A has already been declared. Oh, I don't need, this is why. I don't need to const again. I don't need to redeclare it. Save. And then these, since I want to reassign them, I need these to be let, so that way they're not constant. Alex, you're slipping. Okay. So let's see here. There you go. See, instead of 5 and 6, it's 6 and 5. So you can swap variable values by using destructuring using that method. That's a neat trick. A great way, instead of me having to do like A equals B, B equals C, then C equals A. That always is a confusing way. This is nice and in one line. I like that. But again, you got to be like a let or a var. Can't be a const. Cool. So that's pretty much all the main tricks when it comes to array destructuring. But since we mentioned the spread and rest operator, let me just show you a quick thing with the array with the spread operator. So let's say I had two arrays. So my const my array 1, which equals 1, 2, 3. Const my array 2, which equals 4, 5, 6. And I'd like to combine these arrays, but here's the problem. If I were to just sit there and say const my array 3 equals my R2 and my R3, 2, watch what happens when I console log it. It's not going to be quite what you think it would be. Console.log my R3. Okay, so let me run that function this thing again, and see what we do is we get an array with two nested arrays. Okay, well actually, let me fix that. My array 1, my array 2, save. Let me run it again. So you see, first it has my array 1, which is a 1, 2, and 3, and then my array 2, which is 4, 5, 6. But I want it all as one big array. So this is where the spread operator comes in. I put ... and what it does, instead of putting the array in the array, it takes the individual elements of the array and spreads them out. So now when I do this, spread out that array and spread out that array, if I hit save, now it's just one big array. Okay, so that's using the spread operator with arrays. That's very useful because now I've just combined them into a new array. Okay, and If you've seen any of my videos, actually, I'll leave the values and versus reference discussion to those videos. So that'll be the one thing about spread operators I won't show you. Okay, so now let's talk about objects. So let's first show like sort of the old way without destructuring. So const my obj equals name Alex, age 34. Okie dokie. Now if I wanted to get these two variables into their own individual things, I'd have to do this. Const name equals my obj dot name, const age equals my obj dot age. And then I can console log them separately. Console.log name age. And that's the way you would have to do it for a long time until they added destructuring to JavaScript. Okay, and if I console log that, I'll get Alex 34, because basically this value gets passed into name, this value gets passed into age. But again, I have to do it in 2 lines. I would like to make this even simpler. So, kind of like we did with arrays, destructuring allows us to do that. So it'd be like const, then I put it in curly brackets, because that's the way it knows it's object destructuring. It's destructuring a object. So then I just put name dash age. And then I go equals my obj. Because basically what this tells JavaScript is that, oh, you are destructuring an object. So we're going to go look in my object for a property named name. Oh, there's one. And assign that value. So now name is worth Alex. Age is worth 34. So when I console log this, it's still Alex and 34. So still I end up in the same place, just without the, instead of 2 lines, I get 1 nice looking line of code. That's awesome. Love it. Okay. Neat. Now what else can I do with that? Now let's pretend I had 2 of these. Okay, and this is Bob, who's 58. And this is my obj too. And I wanted to destructure both of them. Okay. The problem is I'm going to run into a problem. I can't have 2 names. I can't have 2 name variables. So this destructuring is going to collide with this destructuring, and it's going to be like, wait a second, you can't reassign name. Watch, I'll actually just run the code so you can see the error. So node, see, identifier name has already been declared. We've already used it. So how do I fix that? I can do this. I put a colon and do name2. So it still looks for name, and it's going to destructure name. But instead of storing it in a variable called name, it'll store it in a variable called name2. And then here I just do the same thing. I'll just be like age 2. So now if I console log this to save, okay, and we run the code. Alex 34, Bob 58. So I can get those freestanding variables. That means I don't, so that way it's actually easier for me to type, because I'm not having to type in like my obj.name, my obj.age, you know, my obj2.name2, you know, I don't have to type all that. That just saves me time. Okay, and it just looks nice. I just think it looks pretty. Okay, if you notice that my Atom editor is kind of filling in all my semicolons for me, that's because I'm using an extension called Prettier. I highly recommend adding it to your editor, whether it's VS Code or Atom. And then if you want to know what my Prettier settings are, here they are. So just in your root folder of like, just put this file here, .prettierrc, and then just plop in this object here, and it will just kind of format things for you. Very nice. Okay, so save. Well, there's no need for me to save that. Save here. So let's see here. There are other cool destructuring tricks, but let's just show you some other stuff with objects. So let me get rid of this line. This line. Okay, and we get rid of obj2. Okay. I mean, that's pretty much destructuring with the main destructuring with objects. I mean, you can combine these two. So for example, Let me bring back Bob. Control V. Oh, Control Z. There we go. And instead, what I'm going to do is we're going to say, we'll just keep it. We'll make this an array again. So I'm going to call this my R. Okay. And this is going to be an array of objects. So I'm going to put the little curly brackets there. Take that semicolon out, replace it with a comma. Take this semicolon out, put a square bracket for the end of the object. I'm going to save it so Prettier can make it look pretty. Didn't do anything. Okay. But let's see here. That's, oh, I need to take out this const here. And I need to take this out too. Just the object. There we go. Save. There we go. That's better. Okay, so we have two objects in this array of objects. So item number 1, item number 0. So what I can do is if I wanted to do that same thing again, but since this is an array, I need to destructure the array. And again, this is my array now. And I want the first thing to be, again, name, age. So I'm going to destructure the first property because the first property is an object. So I can just do an object destructuring for the first property. And then for the second property in the array, which is Bob, I do name and age again. But again, I don't want the collision of same variable names. So I'll do name2, age2, yep, age2. Okay, so you see, I'm destructuring the array and then I'm destructuring the objects in the array, all in one line. So cool. Okay, and again, this is one of those things you just gotta have to play around with a little bit to get the hang of. But once you kind of get the hang of it, it's just really neat. And it's used a lot in a lot of more complicated frameworks as far as how to do certain things. So it's nice to be familiar with the syntax when you read it in the docs. Okay, so now if I run the code, let's run the code, make sure that it prints what we think it's going to print. There it is. Yeah, Alex 34, Bob 58. So you see, and then you can go, this can go as deep as you want. I can keep doing objects and arrays, arrays and objects, and just keep destructuring all the way down. Okay, but I think that's about as complex as one that'd be good to see today. Huh. So that's neat. Now let me show you the spread operator with objects. Okay, so actually not delete all of that. Let's keep me in the picture. Let's get rid of the, that's no longer an array now. I want that there. And I'm going to make this an object again. There we go. So there's me. Okie dokie. And then we'll say there's const, that object is me. And then maybe we'll say here my obj, or my apartment. Okay. And my apartment is location, Brooklyn, rooms 2. Okay, so there's me and there's my apartment, but I'd like to have them all in one object. Okay, so let's see what happens if I did that. So if I did something like const Alex's life equals, then I put the object, and I did my obj. And this is also another neat trick about objects in general, that if I were just to put the name of the variable in there like that, notice how I didn't do like my obj equals my obj. I could do that, but that's extra typing. JavaScript is smart enough to know that if I just put the variable name like this, this is the property name and the value. So watch what happens. So if I console log out my life, console.log Alex's life. Okay. See, my obj is now the value of the object, because what it does, it says we're going to keep the property's name the same as the variable's name, and its value will be the same as the variable's value. It just does that. But notice it's an object instead of an object. But I want it all as just one object. Okay, so this is where the spread operator, once again, kind of like with arrays, allows us all to have it in one object instead of objects and objects. So what I can do is just, again, 3 dots. 1, 2, 3. That spreads out the object. And this spreads out the object. And now look at the difference in result. Now it's just one object with all 4 properties. Neat. Okay, that's pretty cool. Okay, so that's a neat use of the spread operator. Okay, now let's say I have this object that has all 4 properties, but I want to get rid of the number of rooms. I don't need that. So we'll make Alex's life 2, and you can use the spread operator to actually remove a property. The way you do this, let me think about this. Oh, I'm doing this wrong. Okay, because you're using destructuring to do this. So first, I'm going to name the first property, which I want to take out, which is rooms. I want rooms out, so I'm going to destructure rooms. So it's going to put rooms in its own variable, and then I'm going to use the rest operator and say that the rest of the items in this object will go in a variable called Alex's life 2, and that's going to equal Alex's life. Okay, so what it does, it looks in this object, Alex's life, sees there's a rooms property, puts it in its own variable, and the other 3 properties puts it in an object called Alex's life 2. So now, if I change this to Alex's life 2, and I console log it, there it is. See, rooms is not there anymore. So you can use the spread operator and destructuring as a way to remove an item from a object quite easily. So that's pretty neat. Okay, a couple more tricks of the trade. These are with functions. Const. So let's just make a quick function. Const my func equals, and then here's my parameter, param arrow function. Okay. Now, do I want to put a parameter yet? No, we're not going to put a parameter yet. We'll focus. First, let's just say that this, let's say you have a function that you want to return like multiple things. Usually you're thinking, oh, an array can only return a value. But you could return a collection like an object or a array. So I could do something like this. So I want to return multiple things. So I might want to return the number 5 and the word cheese. So now what I can do, if I know that that's what this function does, I can do something like this. Const, I know it's an array that's being returned, so 5, and then a variable called cheese, and I set equals my func. Okay, and basically what happens, this function is going to run, return this array. It's looking for an array to destructure because of the way I wrote this. So it's going to take the first element of this array, assign it to 5, and take the second element. So now I can actually make an array. I can make a function that kind of returns me multiple things in an array, and then just pull out the things I need into the variables I need in a nice quick way, giving you a little bit more juice in your functions. You can now have a function give you back multiple things, and you can just pull them out with ease. So let me console.log 5 cheese. Save. That's 5 and cheese. See? So I just structured the return value of the function. That's pretty cool. Okay. Now let's do this. What if I wanted to, and let's say destructure the parameter. So let's say we did something like this. I'm assuming that you're going to pass in an array with a value, and I want to say param val1 val2. So if I were to pass in an array, the first value of that array is going to be put into this val1 variable and val2, and then what I'll do is I'll do this val2 val1 val2. So this is getting a little, now we're getting a little, really advanced destructuring stuff, but this is pretty neat. So what I'm going to do is in my function, I'm going to pass an array 5 and cheese. I'm passing this array, And what's going to happen is that this array gets passed in as a parameter, so this becomes 5 and cheese. And it sees like it's destructuring syntax. So it's realized like, hey, we're expecting an array and we're going to destructure it. So 5 gets stored into val1 as a freestanding variable, and cheese gets stored into val2 as a freestanding variable. And just to prove that, I'll put an extra console log here. So I'll just put here in the func, so that way we know we're in the function. And then we will console log val1 and val2. Okay. And then I'm going to return the array with those two values, which will then get destructured into 5 and cheese, which will then console log 5 and cheese. And I'll put out of the func, comma. So that way you see. Okay. So see, in the function, 5 and cheese. Because then we pass the array, it gets destructured going in. So val1 and val2 are now freestanding variables. But then we pass those two variables again as a return value, as an array. That array gets destructured into 5 and cheese because it's the return value of my func. And then we console logged 5 and cheese. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Okay, that means if you were passing an array of lots of stuff, you could break down that array right. If you know that's what you're going to do, you can break that array down right before it even enters the function. You know, I can't think of many sort of like low-hanging fruit situations where you might want to do that, but there might be a situation where, you know, let's say you want to create, let's say you have a list of students and you want the first 5 students to be put into a group. Okay, then basically maybe you may set up a function like that. It destructures the first 5 students and puts them in a group or something like that. And then puts the rest of the students in a separate array. So, for example, let's say I added more values. 6, 7, 8. I could add those values and then over here use the spread operator to put the rest of that array in there. So if I were to console log the rest here, you'll see that the rest equals 6, 7, and 8 because I only destructured the first 2 values, 5 and cheese, and said put the rest in the rest. Okay, so see 6, 7, and 8. Not the whole array because we broke it down. And again, so using that situation, you can imagine we pull the first 5 students out of the class, stick the rest of the students in a variable, and then you can keep repeating this process recursively and suddenly separate all the students into groups of 5. That's probably a complicated way of doing that. It's probably, if you could think it through, it's probably typing-wise pretty dry, but a brain buster. But the point is, I'm just trying to point out sort of the possibilities here. And we can do the same thing with objects. Okay? So, yeah, let's just do the same thing with objects. So, const my func equals, okay, we're going to expect an object with a property called name and a property called age. And then any other properties, we're going to put in the rest. Okay? And I need to wrap that in parentheses because it's a parameter. So there we go. So again, whatever the first parameter is, we're assuming it's an object, and I'm going to break it down that way. And then if I hit equals, no, I got to do the arrow. So again, I'll console.log in the func and console.log name, age, the rest. So you can see that in the function, I broke down that object that we're going to pass in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to return just an object with only name and age. Which again, this is a strategy for you to create one way you can create like a smaller object out of a bigger object. So name, age, cool. Yeah, so that's that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say const And I'm going to destructure the object that comes out of the function, so name age, because I want those freestanding. And that's going to equal the result of my func, which we know is an object because we can see that it returns an object. My func, I'm passing it in. I got to pass in an object. So I'm going to pass in name, Alex, age, 34, height, 5'10". That should be a string. 5'10". 5'10". And glasses. I wear glasses, so true. Okay, so there's this object. It's being passed in. So basically what's going to happen is that this gets passed in, this object passed in as a parameter. We take the name, put it in a variable called name. We take age, we stick it in a variable called age, and these other two properties are going to get stored in this the rest. Okay, because we're using the rest operator. Okay, and then then that object gets returned with name and age, and I'm going to pull those right back out. I'm going to take this object and pull it into a freestanding variable called name, a freestanding variable called age, and just to make sure that it all worked out, we're going to console.log name age. Save. And if I do this, okay, cool. See, it worked in the function. Alex, name, age, 34, and then the rest got put into this object. So an object has only the remaining properties. It got destructured on the way out into Alex and 34, where this console log right here. Because right here we pulled it into the variable called name, and here we pull it into the variable called age. So yeah, I think that's a pretty thorough class on destructuring. I think that's pretty much most of the tricks and uses you will see. Yeah, it's very cool. I mean, it's especially useful when you're using a lot of different frameworks where like these, especially when you're talking about like backend frameworks like Express and Next.js, where there's these just large imaginary objects you never see that are being passed around. And there's certain properties in those objects you want, and usually you got to hunt around for them. But here you can just destructure them off the bat, what you need in your functions, and just have them as a single variable instead of having to type in this dot this dot this, like rec dot body, res dot whatever. So this is neat. Hopefully you guys enjoy this. Again, this is something that you got to practice and play with. Try out some of these things that you just saw in this video. Think through possibilities and just try them out, and you'll see it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy destructuring, and the spread and the rest operator are also really cool. So this is pretty cool. I'll see you guys later on. Bye.